Hey guys, Chris from ProvoBeast Audio Installation, and in today's video, we are doing rear deck speakers on this 2010 Chevy Camaro. Now in this install, we're going to show you how to get to those rear deck speakers and show you the parts that we're using for install, including the speaker, bracket, and harness adapter. We'll come back here to get everything reinstalled. Let's get started. Now, before we get started, a couple of things to note. First and foremost, this install is not for the faint of heart. This install does require quite a bit of effort to get to those rear deck speakers. Now, the majority of the rear interior has to come out in order for us to remove the panel that covers those rear deck speakers. So let's get inside and start pulling things apart. Start by pulling the front of the seat cushion up so it unclips, and then pushing down on the back side so it unhooks from the metal rod. From the bracket there, then allows it to come up after it's unhooked. Pull that seat out of the way. There's going to be four 15mm nuts holding on the back of the seat cushion there, and there's going to be an 18 right in the center. Pull those out, and then you may need some help, but carefully lift the rear seat out of the way. This is going to give us a ton more space to work, so we're not super tight getting to these speakers. Next, we need to remove the kick panels on both the driver's side and passenger side of the vehicle. They're just held in with clips. They actually pop pretty easily, especially when using a panel tool like this. Now, once those are out of the way, we need to open up this little airbag door to expose the 7mm, and we need to remove the T50 Torx bolt holding in the top of the seatbelt. Pulling that out gives us plenty of space to work with. That 7mm, just don't lose it, and that door can fall off too. That says airbag, careful there. Pulling out the weather stripping, the rest of the panel is easily held on with just a couple of clips, and it doesn't take much effort just to pop it up and out of the way. Once we pop it out of the way and wiggle it loose, that's going to allow us to actually pull the entire panel out. Just be very careful. You don't want to scratch it as you're trying to maneuver this out from the seat belts. Pull out the door weather seal a little bit more. Now we can unsnap these bigger clips here. There's going to be two there at the bottom. There's two behind the panel itself. And we can't totally take it out of the way because there's a 7mm hidden behind the upper panel. So we're going to unsnap the upper panel too as well. Careful of the airbag here. We're going to unclip it. There's the 7mm screw we're going to remove. Once that's out of the way, that rest of that panel should just fall on out as it does here. Now, we didn't totally take it out of the car. We'll just kind of leave it here since the seatbelt is fed through it. We're going to repeat the process on the driver's side as well. We've already removed the T50 Torx screw at 7mm. Again, remove that upper panel first, get to that 7mm screw, and then the rest of the panel easily just comes on out. Now we're using a metal, more of a leverage panel tool here so we can get back behind these clips without breaking them, giving them the right amount of leverage. Then we can unsnap the front of this panel from the rear deck. Now up underneath, I'm using some pliers to push up on the clips holding in the panel. It just makes it a lot easier when we go to pull the panel out. It's already unclipped. Now we're going to work on it. Give it a little tug here, and at some point it'll totally release. We're just pulling the clips out here. Be very careful. You don't want to nick your tint if you have it, or crack the panel as you're pulling. Once it's released, don't forget there is a harness here on the left-hand side for your brake light. Go ahead and pull that on out. Then that's finally going to expose your two speakers. They're only held in with a single 7mm screw and clips on the other side. Disconnect the harnesses to the speaker, and then the speaker should come free. Repeat the process for the driver's side. Alright, so we're here at the bench with the factory speakers now removed. The parts that we're using for our install today, first and foremost, are the speakers. Customer's chosen go in. Now, we chose these speakers specifically because they are two-way, 2-ohm coaxial speakers, meaning they're a 2-ohm impedance. Here's our factory speaker, and since we have the Boston Acoustic sound system, we need to integrate into the factory amplifier with a 2-ohm speaker. Now, these are 6x9 2-ohm two ways, meaning it's a coaxial. They are a little bit different from the factory. Again, since we have Boston Acoustic, this is the factory speaker, has the mid-bass driver, and on top of it is just the floating tweeter. It's actually two sets of speaker leads that go to it, and so we'll have to modify the speaker just a little bit to work with that factory setup. Now, the speaker bracket adapter needed for the install is the Metro 82-3019. It's very specific to Camaros. It looks similar to other GM brackets, but it's not the same. You need the 3019 version, and we can link it in the description here. We don't have one here today, but what we're going to do is modify this bracket to make the factory bracket work. We'll unscrew it here, and for our case, it should be just fine. We have an example right here where we got that all done. Now, a wiring harness adapter, again, because we have Boston Acoustic, there isn't one really traditionally available with the 4-pin, but if you have a bass version along with the speaker bracket adapter, you need the PAC SH3802 GM harness adapter. This is for the non-amplified version along with the Metro bracket. Again, we can link both in the description. We're the exception to the rule. We have the Boston Audio sound system. It's not an easy setup. For keeping that factory amplifier, we have to integrate into it, and a 2-ohm speaker is what you need. So what we're going to do is take this apart here. We're essentially going to unscrew and remove the tweeter off the top here, and then we're going to pull the mid bass out of it, leaving the bracket, and from that point allows us to mount our speaker into the factory bracket adapter. Alright, so we have basically our bracket that we need here. We're only doing this because we have the premium amplified version here. If you have the bass system, the Metro bracket will work just fine in your application. We went ahead and burrowed out, made our holes a little bit bigger so they fit the screws. It's older plastic, we don't want it to crack, so we went ahead and pre-drilled those holes. Now, also the basket of our speaker is a little big, so it won't totally sit flush. So we have a little bit of a spacer here, and we can link a spacer in the description. But that's going to allow us now to essentially get this nice and mounted using the screws provided by our speakers. Alright, so we got our speaker all mounted up here. Used all these factory holes, got it all bolted up. Now, as we flip this over, what we need to do, since our factory amplifier has actually 2 sets of speaker leads going to this area, we need to separate our tweeter from our mid-range, because our tweeter from that factory amp is getting a different signal than the mid-bass driver. Fortunately, the tweeter in this is on its own passive crossover. It gets a full range and it just snags that signal off these terminals. So we can cut these off, and then we can send the speaker signal from the factory amplifier right into the tweeter and our mid-bass right into the terminals here on our speaker. That's going to allow us to still maintain that factory amp at the right impedance without a ton of modification, and in the end, without bypassing the factory amplifier, we can improve our sound quality. Alright, so we got our speaker all mounted up. On the back here, we separated our tweeter wiring from the mid-bass. And this is going to be the factory amplifier input in there for the tweeter, and factory amplifier input for the mid-bass here. We have 2 sets of speaker leads for the 2 sets of speaker wires. So we cut off our harness here, and we're going to strip the ends in the car. And what we're going to do is put here in the video what's positive and negative for the tweeter and the mid-bass for both the left and the right side, passenger or driver side. And then from there, what we're going to do once we get in the car is we're just going to crimp using some crimp caps to make that connection, and we'll crimp these on. All right, so we're here in the car. So we have our speaker all nice and ready to go. Here's our 2 sets of speaker wires coming in. Tweeter wire, positive. It's the blue, the 2 blues on our driver's side. Solid blue is positive. Blue with a white stripe is negative. And then on our mid-range, or woofer, blue with a white stripe is positive and green with a black stripe is negative. So we made our connections there, took the wires and crimped those on. We're gonna put a zip tie here, and this will stay up here. We'll zip tie it nice and tight, and then we can get our speaker mounted in the factory location. All right, so with both speakers in, everything is zip tied and nice and clean. At this point in time, we can reinstall everything in reverse order. Alrighty, so we got everything basically reassembled in reverse order here. Got everything all put together. Just need to do a wipe down with all the panels that we touched and a vacuum. But basically at this point of time, we are done with this install. This was quite a challenge here. It's not hard, it's just very, very time consuming. Now, like I said before, there's gonna be a big difference between the Boston Acoustic audio sound system and the bass audio, so make sure you check the description for those notes and parts before you start your install. If you wanna see how we did the front door speakers, we'll show that video and link it in the description along with the parts in that video as well. And if you liked what you saw, be sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time. We'll see you in the next video.